that is so weird. And then how do you unlock it? There's like a back lock, but on the bottom, everything about this is crazy.
I don't have the terminology.
I know. There's no words for that.
Hey everybody, I'm Bryce. I work here at CRKT, and today we got a really fun video for you. We're here with Kevin of Knife Nerdery. We were lucky enough to run into Kevin at the Pacific Northwest Custom Invitational Show, a show out here on the coast in Oregon. Really cool little show if you guys can ever make it out to it. But we had a great conversation. Kevin started pulling out some knives that were blowing our minds. CRKT has been developing knives and working with some of the best designers for over 30 years, and we have a bunch of unique mechanisms, and that just really got us off on a really cool jumping off starting point. You should really check out Kevin on YouTube at Knife Nerdery and Instagram. Really cool content. He gets into the nitty gritty, and we love it.
Yeah, it was really fun running into you guys there, and it was also unexpected because I had this stuff all kind of laid out on the table right next to yours, and then everyone from the CRKT table kind of abandoned that table and swarmed around. It was like, whoa. And what was really fun is that CRKT does have a really long history in this kind of stuff. So not only is everyone that works at CRKT like a big knife nerd, they also have behind the scenes information about how this stuff even came to market. So that was a wonderful, wonderful conversation running in. But yeah, my name is Kevin. I run Knife Nerdery, as you said, as a YouTube channel, and I try to take a design and engineering perspective on knives and talk about like how things work and why things are designed the way they are. But I spent the last few years like really deep diving into the history of knives, the history of knife mechanisms, how and why things came to be, and I've always just kind of had a fascination with mechanical objects, and so I've built up a collection of things myself, and also just a bunch of information about where does it all come from, filing, digging through patent databases, all that kind of fun stuff. And so it is really, I think, a huge deal for me to be able to talk with CRKT about this stuff today in this audience, because CRKT really does have a tremendous history, both in terms of like the industry as a whole in terms of mechanism stuff, but also for me, like the impact it had on me. And like one of the big reasons, and one of the things we're going to get started talking about this, is the thing that got me into knives in the first place, literally 20 years ago. Like I had flea market garbage knives that I bought as a kid when I wasn't supposed to be able to before that. But it wasn't until, okay, so like when the Kiss came out, that made me go, okay, that knife is clever. But, I have a Victorinox. I don't need that. It's cool looking. I don't need that. But when this came out, I said, what the heck is that? I need that. And so literally this knife from CRKT, this is the Ed Van Hoy Snap Lock. This is the thing that made me go, oh, whoa, people are doing incredibly cool things in knives specifically. I need to start paying attention to that industry. And this is the one that I bought. This is the exact knife. This is like I have stuff on this table that's over 100 years old, but in terms of tenureship in my collection, this is the oldest knife in my collection. This is the one that started it all.
That's amazing.
And so, yeah, this is CRKT plays a really important role just in my own connection.
That's nice. I love that turning point. Everyone's got that turning point. I had all those kind of cheap knives, and I remember watching that YouTube video in 2010. Somebody goes on for about 15 minutes about a single knife, and you're like, oh, there's so much more to this world. Yeah, I love that pivot point.
When you look closely, you're like, oh, there's a lot to actually think about here. There's a lot of little details, a lot of really interesting things. And even in standard knives, there's really interesting stuff. But when you get into the kind of outer edge, especially the kind of weird stuff that CRKT has put out, that's when you go like, oh, this stuff's fascinating. And like in general, CRKT, I think they've always done two things really, really well. And one is partnering with iconic and important and influential designers to bring designs like knife shapes and aesthetics and functionality, ergonomics and stuff to the market. Like the Richard Rogers designs that came out recently, that's a great example of bringing that to the masses. But the other thing they do is partnering with innovative like designers of mechanisms to bring odd stuff to the market. And some of the stuff that CRKT has brought out is purely practical. Like some of the lock mechanisms are great, but some of this stuff, which at a glance feels like a gimmick, this is still really, really important because this expands people's idea of what a knife can be. And it makes you realize, oh, you can do things completely differently than we've always done it. And so even if something like this might not end up being like the most practical way to deploy a knife, the fact that it does expand the definition of knife means that other people will now get their creative juices flowing, and that's how you inspire the next generation of whatever does come next. Like we wouldn't have things like this if there weren't creative people doing stuff like this a decade or 2 decades earlier. And it's this kind of stuff, as fun as it is also really, really important for the knife industry.
That's, yeah, very well said. I've always tried to encourage people, everything with social media, everything is about the new next greatest drop, and so you move quickly. But I like people to look at our history as a company and understand like the ongoing project that is CRKT, taking these designs that were, bespoke, one-offs, handmade, and then being able to turn those into a manufactured, mass-produced item.
And that is so much harder.
Everybody's been having Ad Van Hoyt, which we had, this is a great example of the difficulties, but to be able to have an Ad Van Hoyt amongst the myriad of other designers we have. But I love, that was very well said. That's exactly what I love about this company and the people that we get to work with here who have been silently shaping the knife world.
Some of the most brilliant people in the knife community.
Great stuff.
We're going to talk all about a bunch of really weird mechanisms. The idea of this video today is to focus on stuff that works fundamentally differently than the way normal knives work. Like normal knives, you fold it out, there's probably some kind of lock on it, but generally speaking, it opens, it's locked open or it's not, and you close it. Everything on this table today opens, probably mostly opens, or operates in some way that is completely different from everything else. And so some of these go back really, really far. Some of these are more modern. Some of these are from CRKT. Some of these aren't. Some of these are handmade customs. There's a lot of variety. I think this is gonna be a very fun, it's probably gonna be a little bit long video, but literally everything on here is kind of mind-blowing, so it's worth sticking around.
I agree.
Why don't we get started? So this is the snap lock I've talked about, and we've got a couple of different varieties. Like I said, this is the literal one that I bought for my personal collection, but I'm so excited to see this. You brought this out. This is the actual prototype?
Yep. So CRKT does have a couple drawers here that you can dig into, and you can see some of the early prototypes of what we've done. This knife came out in the early 2000s. Ed was kind of discovering it and brought us to a design, and we worked with our factories in Taiwan to come up with the final production standpoint. It's still in our line. Funny story, like I started playing with this when I first moved here, and everyone thought I was clipping my nails in my cubicle because of the noise it sounds like, but I was just fidgeting, and it's such a fidgety, fun knife.
All right, let's talk about, okay, so this is a really uncommon category of knives, things that open, they're side opening, they open out the handle side. Like normal knives fold out along this axis. This has the pivot inverted 90 degrees, and this folds out the side of the knife.
Exactly.
And so Ed and Tom Hickok partnered designing this concept with this kind of wishbone style construction, and each of them brought their own designs to the market. We've got the snap lock, and then we got the hole-in-one. We have the tiny version of the snap lock. I forget what it's called. Snap lock 2 mini.
No, I think it was just a numerical change.
And then there's an update to this called the dactyl. These are obviously the same general knife, but this one's really clever in the sense that it adds a new locking aspect to it.
Yep.
But the whole premise here is that this wishbone construction is able to hold the blade in the open or closed position for some way. They both work by having this little like notch right here, a little peg on the top and bottom. And then there's a corresponding slot inside the frame that when you open it, is snapped back down to place. And they use different ways of camming it open, but you cam the wishbone apart. See it kind of spreading like that. And that is so weird and clever. It's a little bit fidgety. Like you can, if you get used to doing it.
It's not hard.
It's not hard to do.
Mm-mm.
And people think that this is also unsafe because of how different it is. But honestly, there is a benefit here in the sense that you're never having your fingers in the path of the blade. Like there is a good enough reason to doing it. And as if you swap the clip, this is also completely ambidextrous.
You can take it off and go full 360.
That's fun. Yeah. It's really hard to manipulate in one hand.
Yeah.
This stuff is really, really crazy. Let's play with this a little bit more. This is the actual prototype from like 2003 era.
Around there, yeah. I'd have to go look into the exact dates, but yeah, you can really see the beautiful example of the cam opening up the wishbone.
Perfect.
And this is a really difficult thing to make on a mass production scale. Unfortunately, it's hard to get the tension on this part correct. It's just a different hardness we're having to achieve on these. But same thing with safety too. What's another interesting point about this is as you grip this knife, you actually reinforce the lock. So I get a lot of people who aren't as dexterous. You know, it's the funny thing in the knife world, we play with so many knives, and the knife coming over the finger isn't as insecure anymore, but it totally, that's a huge advantage.
Yeah, like deep knife nerds are fidgeting with stuff all the time, but for average people, having like a big obvious lever, like even if you open this two-handed, this is still something that you can easily manipulate.
Yeah, it's amazing how well this prototype works.
Yeah,
This is smooth
bonkers.
too. And luckily no edge here, so I can really get kind of loose with it. But it's really functional, just right there off the bat. I was happy we could kind of.
It's so fun seeing it like it's not sharpened at all. So this is just a slab. That's a big old plate. Is such an incredible piece of history.
But they even took the time to put like the cutouts into the cam and add the knurling to all the bar there.
There's like hand-done knurling. Whoa.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think is so fun about this is that it's also a work of art. Like this is very much sculptural art, especially with all the little details in there. The lock here, so okay, so these both have a similar concept of using some kind of leverage to cam the thing apart. This one doesn't have the peg on the bottom. This one just has the peg on the top. And then I guess Tom added this really clever way of locking this. Because if you think about it, what's making this open and close is just this ability to lever. But there's a little notch right there and a catch right there that if you slide this back, now it can't lever down. And if you can't lever it, you can't spread the wishbone, you can't open it up. So this is locked.
Beautiful.
It's so simple, subtle, yeah, but really effective. And if I understand correctly, this is back out on the market?
It is, yeah. It came out, it was out a little pre-2020. Remember we had it in the line for a while, and then we just re-released it this year.
I'm so glad that you're doing stuff like that because these things, like I bought this 20 years ago, but a lot of times with older knives, and I know this from trying to hunt down a lot of stuff, it can be really hard to find these things. And so having like modern production versions is so freaking cool, making this stuff accessible and actually stuff that you can find again. This is incredibly fun.
Yeah, whenever we dig into our history, I'm like, we should bring that one back too. We got a couple models here that are prime candidates, I think. But Dactyl was definitely one.
This thing's gonna be a fingerprint magnet, but I wanted to show, so I've been really deep diving on like how far back do side opening knives even go? I've been able to find examples in the patent databases, especially like in the European patent databases going back to 1890s. And in fact, the vast majority of them don't have this wishbone construction type idea, but the one from 1890 actually does work very similarly to something like this. It's not the same, it's not locking for sure, but it actually does work kind of similar. I've never been able to find a physical instance of it, but they patented it in UK back in 1891, I think. But most of them don't have this kind of wishbone thing. But one example that does, it's really cool. One of the most influential and creative people in the knife world is this guy named Blackie Collins. He's got so many patents to his name. And he's also worked with a bunch of different companies. He started a bunch of different companies. He's crazy in the best kind of way. But he made this. This is going to be hard for the camera to focus on because it is polished absolutely everywhere. This is from 1977. And this is with a company called Mountain Forge Knives, I believe. Maybe Mountain Forge Cutlery. Do I have that written down? Mountain Forge Knives. And they called this the side lock. You can see, I'm sure the camera's not going to be able to focus on this, but there's a patent number right there, and there's the individually modeled. This is basically a slip joint version of this. Like the fact that this has squared corners means that when you open this, this can't move side to side. You have to pull this apart for it to open. This one is doing a slip joint version where instead of square corners, this is rounded. And so this works like a ramp. And so you cam the thing apart, not by some kind of leverage, but just by pushing these rounded parts here up out of that rounded part there. And it just snaps into place. And it's so cool.
Great noise.
I know, you gotta try it. It's a little weird, but it has a wonderful snap into place.
I love it. That's what I love about this and
The noises they make is so fun.
I love that you're digging into history. You know, we think of all these things as sort of like, this is the first time I've ever seen a knife that opened this way, but essentially it's a product that's been invented and reinvented and changed over time.
Yeah, and there's lots of variations, and honestly, so the snap lock is the one that most people, first of all, most people don't know something like this exists, period.
Yeah.
But if they do, they've heard of this one. And this is, I think that's a good thing because A, it's available again, that's great. But B, this is probably the most usable of all of the ones I've found. There's some fun ones out there for sure, but this is like actually kind of practical. This is less so. And yeah, wiping the fingerprints off, that polish, it's
beautiful. That unto itself is hard to do on a full polished knife that blade. I really appreciate what Blackie did with these, and all the guys who are in the knife guild. We're built on the back or on the shoulders of giants sometimes. We forget sometimes. I love seeing this, and the gentlemen who are all involved in that.
We're going to have a couple other things come up from Blackie on this table.
Wow.
And it's going to be fun seeing just how different they are. Because that's one of the things that I think is really fun about Blackie Collins is that not only does he have a million patents, a million inventions, but they're all really, really different from each other. It's not just like he has subtle variations on the same thing over and over. His mind is thinking outside of not just the box, but like every box. He's thinking, it's crazy. Anyway, this is great. So anything else you want to say about these before we move on?
No, really fun. They're all still available, which is cool. I appreciate how long the snap block's been. It's not the most practical knife, but it's still available. And we actually have a new model coming out, new colorways. New colorway. So kind of exciting. I love these kind of knives. This is what gets me excited too, in the CRKT lineup. See,
And you said before, I can't believe how well this works for the prototype. So smooth. This is so cool. So I'm going to sneak this into my...
no, it's almost can buy alcohol. It's almost 20 years. It probably is about 20 years old. So
Oh yeah.
pretty cool.
Okay. Next up, let's talk about one of the weirder things that CRKT has put out. It's funny. So this knife, it looks like a knife. From a design-wise, it looks like a knife. It doesn't look, and stylistically, it wouldn't scream weird in the slightest until you watch someone open it. So the way you open this is you slide the handle down and then slide it back. And that is so, what? Like, what is happening there? And it's called the Comer Fulcrum because Comer designed the pattern. But the mechanism, the fulcrum mechanism, is Charles Kane. And no one knows that because it doesn't say Kane anyway. So he didn't get credit. But this is so weird and clever. And you can, okay, under camera, it's going to probably be hard for me to do quickly, but you can do it. Like if you get, especially on this second generation, where they add in like the curvature there to make it a little bit easier for your thumb.
Definitely. This one got a bit more bite too. I like grabbing that edge and pulling it, but
totally, you can do that one quite fast.
This one's super easy to use, and it's one of the favorites. I like pulling out the CRKT brain teasers at like a trade show or something and be like,
open it, figure out how to do this, and people sit there for a while trying to pull on that.
But this is a totally natural way to open a knife. It's really simple. Same thing with the snap lock. Once you practice with it for a little while, it's really simple. And then you're correct. I mean, the shape overall, very functional shape. The way that the palm, like it swells in your palms, very comfortable, big, usable blade shape.
It's a beautiful gentleman's knife too. Like this early one. This one's a little bit more tactical, but still very beautiful. But this is like a perfect gentleman's knife.
And that's a beautiful time. I would encourage a lot of people to go into CRKT officials videos and search by old and go through those videos, which yes, the CRKT videos give you a beautiful stratification, not only of CRKT history, but also YouTube history.
Yeah.
The first videos are just a person in front of a camera. It's square. They're under 5 minutes. It's beautiful.
And they're so old. It's not just like, yeah, like you said, it's not just knife YouTube, like YouTube in general. These are some of the oldest videos on YouTube.
This has been fun getting ready for this. Not only reading some of the patents we have, but going back through some of our history is always exciting, and seeing those.
The way this works is really weird and cool. Like if you watch how you close it, you can close it with one clean sweep, right? But you can't do that with opening. If I try to pull, it gets stuck right there. And it is a very specifically shaped notch in here that's kind of like that shaped. And pushing up this one pushes up the ramp and pushes it just over far enough to the edge when you pull back. Now you're coming down the other ramp. It's so weird. What's interesting is that there's another way that this worked. So this version that CRKT put out is a liner lock. I think that makes a lot of sense. The one downside of it being a liner lock is that when you go to close this, the handle has to move back, like it has to come back to follow that path. And so it's kind of pushing against where your thumb is trying to push. And so when he filed the patent for this, Charles Kane demonstrated a different way of doing this. And I actually managed to track down one of his handmade custom prototypes. So this was, he made, I think, 7 prototypes, and this one's I think number 5. This is fossilized mammoth ivory.
Beautiful.
And this is all completely hand done file work. Looks nice. And this is the other implementation they showed that actually works as a button lock. So there is a little piston peg right there, and this piece right here, which is Damascus with inlay, you push in that, and that's going to push down that little button. It's really going to be hard to see, especially on camera. They're not going to be able to see it, but there's a little tiny peg right there, and that allows you to cam that out and then pop it back in. And it's a button that's now locking in the open position too. There's no liner of any kind. And so this is his handmade prototype. Yeah, number 5 it says right there.
Oh, that's interesting.
You push that back in, slide, and close it back.
Wow. I love the hidden labels on there too. Again, that's like something that people would think is new. Not new.
This stuff is so weird in the most delightful kind of way. And you got to play with that.
What's kind of funny is now that you're realizing after you said that, I realized that I haven't played with one of these as well, but I use my index finger from the back.
Yeah.
Is it because of the scale?
On these specifically, that's a really good way of doing it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That is so cool. What a beautiful blade too. I love that. Yeah, the fact that you made the button out of Damascus, even though you don't see it from the front.
Yeah, for no reason.
There's
There's
a
the tiniest glimpse.
just to catch a little bit of detail in there. It works amazing.
And the hand filing work everywhere.
So pretty. It is amazing to be able to transfer the motion, the action of pushing that directionality into it just through the different cam systems he's got going here.
Yeah.
So cool. Beautiful. It's amazing how to handle this.
I also love that he put a pocket clip on that. Like, who's gonna carry that as their ABC? But you could still put it in your pocket as well and handle his pen knife.
Yeah, spread some peanut butter or something. Yeah.
With your Damascus blade hand in custom. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, that is beautiful and a really nice made pocket. You know when this was made, or
I have it written down. Yeah, 2006. That's when the patent was filed. So the invention process probably a little bit leading up to that. And I don't know exactly when these came to market. There's also that crazy flame-shaped one.
yes, I had one somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, we'll pull back.
It works the same way. It's just a different design. And just
Yeah.
like with this, it's called the whoever made it version. It doesn't have Kane's name on it. It has whoever the designer of the overall knife shape is. But that one's really just like the wildness of the design matches the wildness of the motion, where this is like kind of tricky in a way. You wouldn't expect something this clean to work like that. Okay, let's switch to... Oh, this is where Blackie Collins is going to come back again. So the CRKT connection is this. People might have seen this, they might not. And this is such a weird knife because it looks wrong in almost every direction. Like this is sticking out the top in a weird way. You can't quite pull that, but you kind of can. It doesn't quite do what you think. There's a button down here. What is any of this? And then when the way this actually works is so weird. That is so weird. And then how do you unlock it? There's like a back lock, but on the bottom. Everything about this is crazy.
I don't have the terminology.
There's no words for that. It's technically a little lever bar. It does work kind of like a back lock in the fact that is sprung and it's like a little teeter-totter, but it's blockading the back down here. You can see on these, one of the things I love is that CRKT put these out in clear handles. And so you can actually see the path of where this little pin right there is like sliding along.
I'm pretty impressed you have one that's not cracked too.
I know, it took a while to find it. But, so there's a second generation of this, and the only real difference is you'll see the shape right here, because this is actually a little bit hard to close. You can get it, like if you kind of shake it or whatever, but it's hard to kind of grab at this. There's not a whole lot to grab onto. And so this version, having this little hook right here means that you can catch this. And so if you get it going back, you can pull on that, and it's easier to kind of set that back into place. But this is a redesign, if you will, from Alan Olishewicz.
Okay.
And the original version of this is way, way earlier. This is from 1979. This is a company called Benchmark, not Benchmade, Benchmark, that doesn't exist. At one point, I think Gerber owned them, but at one point, a lot of different people owned them. At one point, Blackie owned them, as far as I read. But this is the original version. This is a patent pending era. And this is the same general concept way back in, like I said, 1979. This is the largest. They made 3 different sizes. They all had snake names. I don't remember exactly which one's which, but there's like Sidewinder and something. And these are a little bit more loose. And this one doesn't do it super well because it is from the very first like few months that they started making it. But if you get one of these from like I want to say mid 80s, you can just kind of like gravity knife. Actually, that worked. You can just kind of gravity knife it. They're so weird. It has the exact same kind of button down there. And this especially because it looks like this being clear and so odd shaped, people are like, oh yeah, of course it works weird. It looks weird. This just looks like a knife. Don't hand this to someone, they're always going to go like,
yeah, I almost think it's gonna be some contraption that comes out and like, look, I feel that way, but
sliding. Like
Yeah.
it's an out the side, out the front. What is even happening?
That's so, it's actually, yeah, I'd have to play with it a little bit, but that is amazingly smooth, especially for just being a prototype. Love the way it comes out. Very functional. Feels really good. Yeah.
This is definitely one of the ones that is really fun to hand to people. Like pinky strength, is it there? Yeah, I have a friend that can just do that. Pinky it. I can't.
You could get back into rock climbing or something. That's the,
Right, perfect, yeah.
that's beautiful. How smooth it is. Really cool. I wish we could get one of these blown out too to look at the mechanism a little bit more. But yeah, these come up every once in a while. I'll bring people and they always have the cracked plastic. Is this kind of plastic? I'm not sure what type of plastic it is, but it cracks regularly. This is the one that we have that's still in good shape.
You gotta protect it.
Kind of know. I know. I would really. I think this is another one. This is one of those ones that I come across. I'm like, this has got a natural. This is one we got to bring back. I feel like
I would love that to come back.
it's so much fun.
And there's, I mean, today with Ultim being such a popular thing, if you want a clear handle, that's, I mean, probably the way to go.
Man, this with Ultim would be really, really cool. Product development. Yep.
I absolutely adore this.
That's so cool. And that's what is so exciting is like, we're talking about knives and you're pulling out the custom example of it. We get to see actually where it came from. And
Trying to hunt one down and still from the patent pending era took a really long time. I think these actually do, if you do want to find one of these originals, they come up on eBay periodically, but finding one that's marked patent pending or anything like that, because I love when there's physical evidence on the knife of its heritage and its origin, like something that really does place it exactly, that this, I mean, technically these have a production timestamp on the back, so you know that this was actually made in May of 1980, like that, but a lot of times knives don't have any way of really dating when it came from. It's from some time, but when they have that kind of patent pending thing, you know exactly a window when it had to have come from. I love that kind of stuff.
fascinating.
Okay. Ooh, we're gonna do something weird next. Okay, no. That's true of every single thing we're gonna do on the table. Oh wait, I forgot. We have to come back. Okay, yeah. Benchmark actually did a second generation of this. Okay, so CRKT's version. Oh, we should also clarify that this is the roll lock because it rolls out and it locks. That makes sense. This is the Rolex, which I think is a pun off of the term Rolex, the name Rolex, because it's spelled like ROLOX. Okay, they put out a lightweight of this that did actually have a clear handle scale. Those are extremely hard to find and they always are cracked.
Oh yeah.
But they actually did make a version kind of like this. But later they came out with this, and this is another Blackfeet Collins thing. This is they call this the Rolex 2, and it's much simpler. Instead of camming out and sliding up, this just simply slides forward. Right? This is a manual in and out the front knife. There's little notches right there. You have a little lever right there, and it's much simpler, right?
Yeah.
But at least a third, maybe half of Blackie's patents have something to do with sheaths and the weird way that you can do sheaths and the way you can interact knives with sheaths. And so you'll notice I was able to pull this out just fine, right? Pull that out. But there's a little catch right there. There's a little hook right there. And if you push this up, it'll engage with that. So you can pull this out like that and have it auto deploy. That was cool. You gotta try it.
Oh man,
It's just fun.
well, it's like the first time I remember, like back when I was selling blades, and you discover the M16. If you take the pocket clip and put it on the side, especially a dual hilted model, you can pocket catch it.
You can wave
that kind. You can wave it, pocket catch it. But this is really cool. This is a really fun way. I've never seen anything quite like that. You can use the sheath that draws.
It's so small category. There's a very small number of people that have ever attempted to do that. Some of them are really fun.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I'd like oh man, quick deploying, fixed blade feeling, but compact size.
Yeah.
And there's and this is just all, was it glass reinforced nylon? Or
Yeah.
some sort of synthetic.
Yeah, I think it's GRN.
It's all GRN too. I don't see. Wow, that's fascinating. Super lightweight.
Probably from the 90s, if I recall. I don't know exactly when that one came out.
That is so cool. I love that. That pocket clip is so nifty, and I love seeing Phillips back in the day on pocket clips.
Yeah, that's a really good way to date a knife. Like, oh, there's Phillips. That's an old.
Ooh, man, the pocket clips below the pivot, and they've got Phillips. Like, holy cow! Every once in a while, I'll get an M16 if somebody's got it that way. Really old.
One of the originals.
Makes me so happy to see that it's still out there kicking.
Okay. Let's move into something that opens in a fundamentally different way from other things. There's two knives here. One of these is more famous than the other, Both of them work in very, very similar ways, but completely different from literally anything else on the market. I think there's maybe one or two other people that have ever tried to do something similar to this, but these are lever gear actuated knives. So this is a back lock. In terms of how it locks, nothing different, but get a better view of that. It's holding it sideways.
That's so happy and mechanical.
It feels so good. It feels so good to actuate.
This is one I remember you pulled out at the Pacific Northwest Custom, and I was just, it's just enamoring. I love the mechanisms. And this one works on gears too. I see the planetary gears on
Yeah,
this
so
one.
this is inside and it's all internal.
Mhm.
This is the Soak River Knives lever lock. These were made by Camillus, and when Soak River went out of business within like 2 years, Camillus was already making them. They're like, can we just buy the patent for that? They're like, yep. And so all they did is change Soak River to Camillus, otherwise they look exactly the same.
Oh, fascinating.
But it was important to me to hunt down one of the ones that are from the Soak River era.
Yeah.
But this is the Hawk. Okay, if you're going to be talking about creative, innovative people in the industry, Blackie Collins is obvious there. Grant and Gavin Hawk, absolute wizards, amazing, brilliant minds. Also just incredibly nice people. Grant, rest in peace. Gavin is still with us, luckily, and he's going to have so many cool things coming out. I'm so glad these people exist. But this came out in, I think 2019. Yeah. So this is the same general idea, but you take the gear system and externalize it and turn it into this planetary system. And now, not only is it cool and weird, but you get to see it. It's got this steampunky quality to it where it just looks crazy. With both of these, there's something really fun that you can kind of inherently know the gear ratio here, because this is moving roughly 60 degrees, and for the blade to move roughly 180 degrees. So there's a roughly 3-to-1 gear ratio in how this works. Like it's just, and this is the same thing. It was so fun.
Authority.
Oh, part of the reason for that is on normal knives, you have a detent. Oh, it's so fun to watch. Yeah, on normal knives, you have a detent, right? And you're building up pressure and you're breaking the detent. But as soon as that you are no longer making contact with the flipper tab, you're not accelerating the blade anymore, right?
Yep.
With these, you're pushing directly with a gear the entire path of travel. So you're forcing that blade open and accelerating it the entire time. It's such a snappy feeling. It's so satisfying.
This is so cool. You can see this one's very ergonomic too, the way everything works. You can get to the liner lock before the lever gets to you. I like how also this one, the lever stays within the full profile of the knife.
Yeah.
It seems like it hangs off the scale, but it's still within the profile of the blade,
Yeah.
which is a very ergonomic shape. And they probably had to do some math. Oh man, that is so cool. To drive it all the way out is so cool.
Feels so good.
Yeah, I love the mechanical feel of it too. You can feel those teeth biting in.
This is from the first generation that Mantis Knives put out. They do still make these. It's just still in production. They're usually in even showier materials to make it look even weirder, with like layering carbon fiber and aluminum and having Damascus blades and stuff like that.
I like just the raw look at this one. It's cool. Okay, we'll see the mechanism.
That's what I wanted. I wanted one of these original versions because the simplified thing lets you focus on the mechanism itself rather than the style of it, because it is really cool looking, but this allows you to kind of more easily see there's gears everywhere. And that's just a weird thing to be able to say about knives.
Oh man, yeah, a little bit more cleaning duty on that one, but man, it's so cool.
I love it.
I love the feel of it and the way it drives out. It's so unique. This one too, was so much fun to play around with. It feels so good too, the way the blade deploys. This one, obviously, you get a little bit more.
It's got snap.
It's got snap to it for sure.
Okay,
So cool.
let's transition now. One of my absolute favorite categories of knives in terms of like how things move is what we call today funny folders. It's a type of, some people called them back in the day like flip-flop knives. Some people called them, people call other things trifolds, but some people call these trifolds. But well, you'll see in a moment pretty quickly why people would call these flip-flop knives or funny folders. They're this weird category of knife that's been around since the earliest patent I found is from the 1880s, where it is made up of 3 different pieces, which is why some people call it trifolds, and they flop around each other to turn into a knife. And what's fun, like from a safety perspective, these were marketed as like some of the early product marketing back in the 1940s and stuff like that, emphasized the fact that these are incredibly safe, because when it's open, there's no way for this to close.
True.
Like you would have to have it has to do this to close, and that's like one of several steps. And so when you're holding this, you effectively have a fixed blade, and like much more so than a lot of things say, like it's a virtual fixed blade. This is effectively a fixed blade.
Yeah.
And we call them funny folders because in the 1970s, Ted Dowell, who's from here in Oregon, he's from Bend. Well, he's not with us anymore, but he created these custom versions that he actually poured a lot of effort into. A lot of the funny folders that are on the market were like really cheaply made, and they were used as marketing promotional stuff. So it's really hard to find one that doesn't have an advertisement stamped on the side. From like you'd buy new tires for your car in 1950s and they'd give you a little pocket knife. We need to bring that back.
I agree. The tire companies.
But Ted Dowell put in the effort of making like really, really nice high-end custom versions. He worked with D2 Steel, and he's got this wicked hollow grind on here.
Beautiful polish too.
And so because he actually made like high quality versions of these that kind of brought this back to the forefront of people's minds, his name for it, funny folder, is what stuck and kind of took over. But he invented that term in the 90s. And like I said, these have been around since the 1880s. And I brought today the oldest one that's in my collection. This is also technically a handmade custom. This is by a guy named Harry Negbauer, and this is from the 1920s, which is why it's got this Art Deco styling.
Beautiful.
And it's the same kind of general principle, but it's got, this little catch at the bottom here. Like there's a bunch of different patents for these, and what's different about all of them is whether or not they do things like try to hold the blade slightly more in place, or little subtle things. Some will have like a little bit of a detent ball, or some will operate just ever so slightly differently. And this one has these little notches for putting a key ring thing on. They're so weird and fun, and a lot of them are small, and I personally love tiny things.
Totally.
So
that is really cool. I love these. And yeah, it's just, like a 1% change, and all these patents. This has been fun experience for me to go back and dig into it, but just to see the mechanisms and how they're described. It's just years of reinvention and slight changes to create where you are. But
yeah,
fascinating. It's been around for that long.
There's also some fun things in the patent world. If you change what makes it novel is partly what industry you're applying it in, which is a really weird thing to think about. But like if someone used this technology, but in a very different field, you can then patent the same thing in your field. And so there were patents for this in knives, but people are like, you know what? There's things that aren't knives. And so you can find funny folder, flip-floppy things like this that have a pen on it, or a toothbrush, a travel toothbrush. It's actually kind of brilliant.
That is, yeah. All the ultralight backpackers could get on that.
Right? I just adore these. I find them very fun, gadgety, and I've loved these since I was a kid. I remember seeing one of these in like my grandpa's box when I was like 4, and so I adore these, and I have probably 40 or so of these in my collection. I try to get one of every variety that I can find, little subtle variations.
That's awesome. I love to see everyone's different collecting style too. I mean, that's such a specific way to go down knives and collecting, and everyone's different. You get into someone's collection, see their thought process.
What weird thing tickles your specific
Why specifically do you like that? It's so cool. That's really
for me, being able to see just like, this is a knife, and for some reason is making these weird angles. Like that just blows my mind every time.
That's so cool. It's on full display. The peacock feathers are out. That's beautiful.
So, okay, this is a great segue. Oh yeah. He did these in mostly micarta. He did some in wood. They're all just beautiful. And at some point, he started adding a little hook at the bottom right there that actually makes this one directional in terms of not like what way you have to fold it out.
See, I soldered it too. That's cool.
I know, it's so neat to see
the person working on it.
Yeah.
Ah, man, that's too cool.
Lucas Burnley has been filming some videos down in Ted Dowell's shop. Ted Dowell's son was like, "Oh, Lucas, you're in Bend too. Do you want to come down and check out the shop?" And so he's been filming these videos for his Instagram where it's just like him exploring the remnants of Ted Dowell's shop and finding all of the pieces for this and all of the equipment he used to line things up to make all the holes in it line up correctly. Like I love it. It's so fascinating. It's a wonderful view.
And the right person to do it too. Lucas has got such a great eye, and his passion for it is just,
he knows so much about this stuff.
I can't help myself. I love watching his content. Another great follow.
Yeah, I posted on there. I was like, I'm so glad you specifically are the one that gets to film this. This is a great segue because I said some people call these trifolds because there are 3 different components that fold. But that terminology more often applies to a different category of knife that these days are kind of making a comeback as far as gravity knives, because there's a couple companies that make versions of this that you can kind of swing. Technically, you could do that on this too. This is not the oldest. I found patents for these dating back to trifolds type things dating back to the 1880s. This particular one is from 1923. And this is another, I said earlier, that when something's marked in the patent pending era, you can just definitively timestamp it. And this is one of the few that I found or even seen pictures of that is from that patent pending era. This is from United Cutlery, which eventually went on to become K-Bar. But this is back before they were called K-Bar, and K-Bar was just like a brand that they use. And so this, if we look, this folds out like this, and then this folds out like this, hence trifold. This style is also sometimes called Jacob's Ladder knives because it's like that Jacob's Ladder toy.
Sure.
But you can see right here that this is marked United Cutlery. No, sorry, Union Cutlery. United Cutlery is a different brand. Sure. It's easy to mix this stuff up. Union Cutlery of Owens, New York, and it still says K-Bar, but that's because K-Bar is like a product line they had.
Blade shape looks reminiscent.
Yeah. So this folds up here, and the reason why they were able to patent this, even though there were other trifold patents, is literally as simple as there's locks.
Just that little hinge.
Just a little tiny little hint. But it's such a cool, weird piece of history, and these things are just so neat. Again, seeing like this and saying that's a knife, it's shaped like that. It blows my mind every single time I see it, and I love it so much.
I like that. Yeah, Olean New York does not get the credit they deserve as a major manufacturer for knives over the years. You get like, Solge in Germany and some place in Japan.
Seriously, okay, so there is a part of Southwest New York and Northwest Pennsylvania where Tidiute, PA, and where's the place where, it doesn't matter. The point is there's like this little area, Cattaraugus. It's where like Case came from. So many brands came from that small pocket, and so many incredible knives came from that. They were the Solingen of America for like 40 years.
Yeah, ahead of time.
Around like 1880s, 1920s, and then still today some degree, but like it was a hotbed of production. It was really, really clever.
We switched it to like Portland, Oregon and Golden, Colorado. Some Nevada. They're all up. It's a little bit more disparate now.
A couple people in Texas. It's just stuff.
There's a lot. They're all people making knives all over the country, which is awesome.
So these are already so freaking weird as far as knives, but I brought one that's even weirder. So in 1970s, a guy named Dennis Brooker created this. This is a version of a trifold that instead of going fold, fold, or like fold, fold, it goes fold, fold. So it explores 2 different axes. This is like, the fact that I'm doing this with a knife right now, this is so bizarre. And you can kind of, I don't know if I can do this on camera, you can kind of fling this and do it. You can kind of grab it.
It was really good, yeah.
This particular one is from the 1980s from Explorer and made in Japan. Explorer, these were typically made by the Seizo Imai factory, and they were made for a company called Gutman Cutlery, and they partnered with custom makers to bring designs to market, a lot like what CRKT does, but back in the like 80s, like late 70s through early 90s is when this company was doing this stuff. I'm yet to be able to track down one of the handmade customs from these, but it's just it's so weird. It's so weird.
I just like having this one out in its full, in its full kind of mechanical function. That's not that like breaks the knife.
Knife shouldn't look like this. This is, okay, you can kind of, I should open it one hand, closing it one hand is like, please don't stab me, please don't stab me, please don't.
Oh, got it.
Did it.
That's fun.
Yeah, this stuff's goofy, but like, it's also kind of clever.
Totally. That's a fun, interesting. I mean, in a lot of ways, you have an automatic or something, which is so simple. It's out of the pocket, blades out, you do your cutting, it's back in your pocket. Why not have a little fun in that
This
process?
gives you a project.
Yeah, like an out the front automatic really cuts the fat out of all that procedure, but this one's more fun.
At the same time, though, like having the axis that this moves be in this dimension means that it literally can't rotate close on your hand.
Huh.
Like it cannot close on your hand no matter what. As long as you're gripping this, it can't cut you. Like there is some amount of practicality to
Totally.
it.
Yeah.
And the way that they designed this one where it comes down means that the force of cutting is all pushing into this big bar right there. And so like, it's actually a pretty strong knife. Like there is some logic to this insanity.
100%.
Some.
Yeah. No, I mean, outside of just it being a fun mechanism, but that's why I love just the thought process of the people at this time thinking about it, like I could change it and do this mechanism. Super cool. It's fun to capture that time.
I know the creativity. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's so fun seeing how people, like you said earlier, people like came up with this weird idea and then 40 years later, without any knowledge, because the internet won't exist for another 100 years kind of thing, someone else is like, you know what would be weird? And so there's these little pockets of spontaneous reinvention and co-invention where people are like, that would be fun. I wonder, could I? And a lot of these with the patents, like the people who filed the patent had no way of knowing that someone did anything similar, because it's like you would only like you literally with some of the stuff in the 1800s, you're literally like cars weren't even allowed, like you would have to travel by wagon or train or something to find the person on the other side of anyway. But the patent office, like their job is to like try to find prior art. And so you'll find that these patents technically cite the earlier patents, but only because the patent office was like, we found something. But even then, there's a lot of time for people come up with something and successfully patent something that feels kind of like the same thing. And it's really, but you have to think about exactly the subtle differences, like just having this tiny little latch right there is all it took for this to be a technically patentable invention.
Yeah. I guess a lot of the crossover, they just punch it to the courts and let the courts decide if it's too close or not. That's a lot of new invention, a lot of inventors out there. So I'm sure the patent office is inundated with, and we get approached all the time with interesting new mechanisms, good ideas. I love seeing that, somebody who's got a real rough prototype at a trade show.
Yeah.
And I'll sign the NDA. I want to see it.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, I want to see it.
Yeah, let's do it. What a cool idea. Oh.
This is another good segue into a style of knife that people call swing locks. And I gotta try and fit everything on here. And it's, again, things where the handles move in fundamentally different ways. I tend to call these split handle knives. And this is another case where these are typically called by their modern name, the same way that Ted Dowell came up with the name Funny Folder in the 70s. Barry Wood came up with the name swing lock in the 60s. And he absolutely did invent this. Like, this is his own invention, in the same kind of way we were talking about, where he had no good way of knowing that anything came out prior. Turns out that if you dig hard enough and dig deep enough, there are probably like 20 people who have done something similar to this all around the turn of the century, like 1880s to 1920s. There's a flurry of things like this. And then nothing for like about 40 years. And then Barry Wood is like, I have an idea. And so what's really cool about this is this looks so much like it's just a normal knife. And it looks so much like you would just pull this out.
Yep.
But instead, there's a little notch right here because this splits apart and the handle swings around on itself. It's so like magic, freaking weird. It's another of those things where you can have this set down like this and go like, that's a knife? It can be shaped like that? It looks like a throwing star. Exactly. It's so crazy.
Wow, look at those big, the detent. Oh no, that's where, those are the pins pushed into it. Wow. It was so crazy because the way you were doing it, then the blade is just kind of left revealed after it comes out with it, and you continue to go, not leaving your finger behind. Wow. It's so cool and big and chunky. Look at those big pins in there.
These days, Jared Oser is making handmade customs version, and actually for their superlative line, they having version of this where it's using a magnet at the back.
Oh, cool.
And that's a follow-up patent on this, where replacing the detent system with a magnet is its own patentable thing.
Yeah.
And it's actually Shade Tree Composites, the guy who makes the cool like micartas and burlap and stuff like that. He's the guy that has the patent on that.
Wood knives, Venice, California.
Yeah, Barry Wood is a brilliant man and a very, very talented knife maker.
Man, it's cool. Some brass in the back there. That's really cool.
So I did manage to track down, I like for a lot of those old ones from the 1880s, 1920s, I've been able to find pictures, but I can't find any for sale anywhere. Someday I hope to add in the collection. I managed to pick this up. I'm not kidding. $5. This is from, I have wrote it down, 1939. This is the Rhoda knife. And this was sold as a knife / manicure kit because this is like for picking it at,
Of course.
but this works the same general principle of swinging around.
Yep.
So we've got a little pocket knife, but we also have a nail file. And this one does a totally different way of doing the detent. It uses that kind of like fingernail cleaner as the retention.
Wow. That's really cool. A little multi-tool.
I know.
It totally achieved that.
And this is like, I mean, this is different, like how it's actually working inside in terms of what's catching what. This has like a little pin and a smile-shaped arc, kind of like an internal stop pin. This is just literally like bent pieces of metal on the outside that catch it. But at the same time, this is still the same general concept.
Totally.
Back in 1939.
It's amazing. You know, we have new production styles and everything, but people think a lot of the same ways. You know, you see this in like warfare. That's kind of my study. I like looking back at Civil War and how close it was to World War I. People don't realize, you know, the gap there, but they were doing a lot of really inventive things back
Oh
then.
gosh, out of necessity.
Out of necessity, but you know, people when pressed will come up with really interesting ideas, and it's fascinating that they just had the same kind of thought process, just different times, and obviously with different manufacturing capabilities at the time.
These are handmade, and it is just stunning, the work on them. I didn't bring one with me, but before Benchmade was Benchmade, they were called Pacific Cutlery Corp, and there is a version, so Barry Wood and Mike, I always say his last name wrong, Mike Irie? Like Erie? I don't know. He's still alive. He's amazing. I got to meet him. He's incredibly nice. He was Barry Wood's son-in-law, but he himself is an extremely talented and prolific knife maker. And at one point, they partnered together on a couple of versions of knives that work like this, and they did a production version through Pacific Cutlery for. Cool. And it makes sense because back then, Benchmade was like, they were like before Benchmade, they were Balisong Knife Company, and then they were, before that, they were Pacific Cutlery. So they were in this like Balisong world. So if you're gonna make something that kind of swings weird open, of course, a Balisong company should be making that.
Definitely.
But the production, it takes, like these are handmade, those are CNC'd,
Yeah.
but like both of them have to be incredibly precise for these things to line up. And there's actually like a special kind of spring collet in here that allows this to still stay tight, but allows it to go up this ramp. Like this is complicated stuff, but it's really clever.
Super cool.
I love this stuff.
Oh, man.
This is another good segue. I tried to order these things so they kind of followed a pattern, but it's working out better than I expected. Let's jump to these. These are fixed blades that all have a secret. And they all have, oof, not a good retention rate. These all have generally the same kind of secret, but this is, actually this might even be the oldest, but this is from right here in Oregon. A guy in Beaverton in the 80s came up with this idea, and Al Marr was in this area too at the time. And he's like, he showed him at a knife show, and he's like, I want to get these made. And Al Marr's like, I know how to get knives made. And so these were made by G. Sakai, the same factory that made all of Al Marr's knives. And this is the Orion Swing Blade. And this is, at first glance, just a fixed blade. It looks like a fixed blade. It works like a fixed blade.
Yeah.
But it's got that secret. You pull down on this entire back collet slides off backward. And now you've got like a, I don't know, a filleting or skinning or whatever you would need it for, a different kind of blade.
Yeah.
This is another one of those things where knives can look like this.
There's a bit of a hit with the handle to blade ratio. There's something's going on there.
Something's going on.
Like you just don't know. Same thing with all these kind of wicked like catches in the front here and finger choils.
Yeah, just like something is going on.
Yeah, something's going on. I don't know what, but
so sometime, I actually can't track this down, but sometime in the 80s, maybe early 90s, I don't know. Also made in Japan. This is from Outdoors World. And this one, rather than having like a collet, this is effectively a slip joint because it looks like a fixed blade, but you'll notice there's like a split, something that almost looks like a back spring because it is a back spring. And if you push on this, it will swing around, and now you've got a bunch of tools.
Wow.
Got a wrench, got a bottle opener, you got a little pry slash screwdriver.
Jeez Louise.
And it's just so weird being able to see knives shaped like this.
That is so cool. Wow, it really wants to snap in there.
Oh, I know.
The deep engravings are cool too. You know, the surface level laser engravings we have now, I like that it's when it's actually relieved a little bit.
Yeah, it's another like the Phillips head screws. You know it's from a different
I
time.
know, that's, oh man. It's like fun seeing a Spyderco with a Moley clip. Not many of them exist. It's rare to see. I've got one, a really early one that's a
Really?
pivot. And it's, I forget which model it was. It was Mel Pardue. No liners. It's all glass. It's getting brittle heck, and I don't like bringing it out. It's one of my favorite pieces that I have that harkens back to a much simpler, and when they were really revolutionary, and still are, but like very, very revolutionary with that kind of model. That is so cool. I love the reinforcing snap it gives you.
Oh, I know.
It also like it's happy sitting right there too.
Yeah, the half stop, because you have to have a half stop.
Gotta have a stop, obviously. That is so cool.
These days, the company Outdoor Edge has a trademark on the word swing blade, and in Europe, they have a patent on this. They tried to patent this in the US and it failed and they abandoned the patent. But this is the exact same concept, but a button lock. And the idea, again, of a fixed blade button lock is just so, like, that shouldn't be.
It sounds like an oxymoron.
But you push in the button, and then now you get to swing around, and now you've got like your gut hook blade.
So interesting.
These are obviously pitched at like hunters.
Yeah,
This too. This is pitched at like camping and just kind of general utility.
makes sense.
But again, how? This is so weird.
This would probably make a really mean can opener. You have really would have so much more leverage than the old school ones. You sit here and like work it around. That one, you really could put some leverage on those cans.
Yeah.
That's fascinating how smooth this one is too. Big belly on the blade. Really cool. Huh.
I love the idea of a fixed blade button lock or a fixed blade slip joint or whatever the heck you would call this.
Right. That is so cool. Hell, we have to come up with terms. I don't really have a whole lot of terms for this.
Yeah, there's no words
I
for
do.
these things.
I think I know enough about knives, and then, wow, whole new level.
And there are only like, I think 100 or 150 of these made.
No
So,
kidding.
and does it go all the way around? Yeah, it does. I forgot that it actually goes a full 360. You can, if it were loose enough, you could just spin and spin. This is obviously not the most practical in terms of something you could do one-handed, but it's also not terribly hard, and it slides into place pretty easily.
Oh, man, very reinforcing. That's cool.
Oh, I have number 6. That's cool. Okay. Put these put away.
It's a cool sheath too. I like how it really filters it in.
This is what this came with, but I have no idea if it's what it came with originally. Like, it does kind of line up, kind of, but it's, I think probably someone just added this on in the decades since this was made. Okay. We got to stick with handles that move, do things they shouldn't do. This is, where is it on the table? Okay, this is really cool. This is called the Neft Safety Knife. And a lot of these things that work in really weird ways, by modern standards, since we're so used to how like a flipper tab knife works, that things that are awkward like this feel less safe to us. But we're coming from an era where all there was like slip joints and to some degree lockbacks or backlocks, whatever you want to call them. And so there wasn't a lot out there in ways of preventing, like there weren't button locks, things that would allow you to keep your fingers out of the path of the blade. And so some of these things are specifically marketed as safety because they work in ways that make it so that your finger could never be in the path of the blade.
If you ever had a lockback that's really tight, it will work as a mouse trap. That's kind of the term we use, but they can come down real hard on closure. Yeah, that's definitely a safety issue.
So this looks at first glance like it's going to be an out the front. Like it's a long tube. Here's like a thing at the front. There's what appears to be like a button. But this is from 1922. The patent started in 1918. He's got 3 different versions, but this particular one's from 1920. And they were only made for about a year and a half because if you think about how tight everything has to be, how much everything has to line up, these were very expensive to make. And in 1920, when they were trying to sell these for $2, that was still a big ask. But it cost them almost $2 to make. And so they basically went out of business trying to bring this to market. This medallion, you pull back on this, and this one's really tight because it's like practically brand new, but this entire front part lifts up spring-loaded, and then you slide this out. This is not meant to be a gravity knife. It's very tight. And then you clamp this back down. So this is also safety in the fact that this entire frame would need to break for this to close on you. And so they, in the advertising back in the day, pitched this as a virtual fixed blade, the way everyone wants to call their locker virtual fixed blades. This is one of those things where, again, like, it would have to significantly destroy the handle of the knife for this to actually close on you. And you can see that they call it the Improved Hunter, MEF safety. And I love their little dog logo. It took me a long time to find one of these with the original etch still visible.
A little jagged nail nick almost on there.
Yes.
Oh, really weird.
Yeah, a long pole with the weird little file for some reason.
Yeah. I wonder if it was just, who knows, it's a machining thing.
This one has a little nick right here because when it closes, well, we'll see. When it closes, again, this one's really tight. This is naturally kind of canted towards the handle, and you can see how it would smack that. But don't cut yourself. Feel this. This is from 1920. Feel how sharp this is. It's like sticky sharp.
Yeah, they got this thing so thin. It is such a thin blade.
It's a really good grind.
It's flat.
Period. Let alone that old.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that is really grabby.
There are not many knives in this category that I call clamshell construction. Very few people have ever tried to do something like this that opens in some kind of folding along one of the seams.
Yeah, you can feel the stickiness. I'm very nervous.
I have 2 of these, and the other one is like really quick and easy because it's been broken in. But this one's obviously sat in someone's shelf for a really long time.
Wow. That is so cool.
I love any time that you go to open a knife and it does something
Yeah.
that makes people go like, what am I even seeing right now?
Yeah, where's this going?
What is happening? It's folding open, it's flipping, flopping. Is that
Totally. That's when we first ran into you at the show. That was while you were blowing our minds with the different stuff. It's just like a collection had on
what
you.
is that?
We're so used to being that for people. Here we came over and we're blowing our minds. It was awesome.
We got one more weird bow before we get into something back from CRKT. This is, I thought was fun. This just doesn't look like it's a knife.
Yeah, it looks like one of those.
Sounds like a baton.
Or like maybe like a maze, one of those things you'd have to open up, like a simple, or it was from that famous book.
Yeah, like Da Vinci's.
Yes, it was, and they had I forget what they were called.
There's a word. Chris said something, right?
Simplex.
Yeah, that's a cool. So this is, honestly, I think the design for this goes back way, way, way older. I'm pretty confident I came across a patent a long, long time ago, but I can't find it again. But this is a design from a guy, I had to write his name down because I'm never going to even pronounce it correctly. Konstantin something. He goes by a Tropos knife. And he's a guy in Russia, and he makes handmade versions of these. This is a production version from Lord and Field called the Fortel. And so he does still make these technically, but as you can imagine with everything going on, it's hard to get stuff out of Russia. And so he doesn't have any of these for sale right now, but I talked with him and he said he will be continuing bringing these back. But this is technically pitched as both a fishing knife and a knife and fork combo. So it's got this little latch right here, and that allows you to separate these 2 handles. And here you see the first knife and fork. And I've seen videos of people out there doing it. Like, it technically does work.
Yeah.
But why stop there? Because you can instead turn this little knob at the bottom and then pull this entire piece out, pull it back. It works like kind of like an open L in terms of a locking collet. And now you've got a knife, a full knife. But why stop there? Because technically speaking, you can stick this in the back right here. And now you've got a knife. Wow. This is so goofy and weird, kind of practical in a sense. I don't know if this is realistic. Like, if anyone would have, I think this might be more of like a consequence that technically you can do this as hosted by design.
Why not?
Because I don't know. 2 hands. It's mostly just fun. But this is, I don't know, what I love about things like this is this falls into a category of trying to fit a really large amount of blade into a smaller amount of handle or like a carryable thing.
Definitely.
And if you want a blade this long, a folding version of this that can turn into a little tube that you can just throw in your bag, there actually is something kind of practical about that.
100%. And trying to maximize your blade is something that like kind of goes unnoticed. You know, we talk about it with like Ken. Ken Onion really tries to maximize your blade, and he's done interesting things. Like he'll mill out the backspacer so that the little bit more blade can fit in there.
Just a little bit more belly.
A.G. Russell's done stuff like this too. There's a lot of examples in how he uses big blades where if you can lay it out, you're technically getting more blade.
Yeah, especially if you're doing like a rolling kind of slicing type thing, you actually are using the full blade length. It's not the blade, but like the cutting edge length.
Yeah, you can lay that out flat if it was if you Wharncliffed it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I always love that, like, you know, Ken's trying to maximize, give you a couple extra millimeters to your money, a little bit more value, but this takes that to another level. Crazy Russian hacker style.
Yes, precisely.
That's awesome.
And then
Beautifully mechanical. I almost like don't know that I can figure it. Oh yeah, that feels pretty good.
the whole thing then just slides back. I'm pretty sure I have this oriented right, but I might have to turn it around.
Yeah, the unassuming tube.
Tube.
Yeah. Oh, was there a letter in there? Maybe a, you know, it looks like some, I don't know, baton for a relay. Nope.
Always be prepared. Use this for your relay.
It's so cool. I'd never guessed that coming out of that.
Okay, it's time to get a very specific kind of weird. Everything from here on out in the rest of the video is going to have some kind of mechanical linkage. And I think bringing this back to CRKT with the Provoke is, I think, the perfect example of what we mean when we say linkage. So there's some kind of fixed rigid thing that is connected by joints of some kind that allows it to move and unfold in some way. And this is such a weird, neat knife. Is so compact, but then what? Like, this is another one of those things where, like, there is a practical benefit to being able to deploy quick. Like this is a karambit style, and obviously those are intended for specific kind of self-defense.
Sure.
But you guys make the EDC version of this too, and there's still a benefit to being able to quickly deploy your EDC knife, especially one-handed.
Definitely.
But being able to see the way that this moves, and the fact that there's like, this is so weird and neat. This is by Joe Caswell, and he is another one of those people. He's not as prolific as people like the Hawks, but he is every bit as like creative. And specifically, he's approaching things not just from a creativity standpoint, how can we make it do different, but how can we make it work in a way that is structurally sound? He's got a lot of like mechanical engineering type mentality to stuff where these things are strong. They lock in ways that are like secure, and these are like well thought out designs, not just clever, weird designs. So weird.
It was just crazy. He kind of like, you know, in his design, he did do a knife before this one that had a clip that disappeared depending on when it was open, which he's got a real, he really doesn't like hot spots, which is cool. That's kind of a consistent design, but he just looked at the karambit and saw a flaw with a folding karambit. You know, normally that's going to necessitate like a pocket catch as you come out, or some sort of weird way that you have to readdress the knife. And what this knife is used for in a self-defense sort of situation, that's less than ideal. So you really solved a lot of the shortcomings of the traditional folding karambit, even with the pocket clip, which I think is just brilliant, how it lays flush and gets rid of the hot spot.
Completely disappears. You will never feel that.
100%. You won't feel it, and it rides so much lower than your traditional karambit. Generally, you're going to see the ring, and everybody's aware of what you have in your pocket. But this one rides lower. I have spotted somebody at my local Safeway that has one, so I was kind of excited to see that pocket clip, and I felt like it was probably one of the few people who recognize it.
It's so fun to see a pocket clip in general, but when you recognize the pocket clip and you're like, not just recognize, but you're like, that's something really fun. You're a very specific type of knife person.
You're at a trade show and I see a pocket, I'm gonna play the pocket clip game and I'm gonna try to guess the model and what you got in your pocket based on that. And that's super fun.
We can do that at the end of the video. That's something fun right there.
I have no idea. I'll have to go with a much more common knife collector to get that one, but...
So like you were saying, in the actual intended use for this original version with a karambit style, anything having to do with fumbling with a knife, when you're, you know, milliseconds count, when you're like a life or death scenario, this is super important. But like we said before, even EDC version of this that has a regular drop point blade, not having to like accidentally flick something, not having to open with two hands, or, oh, we're getting another one? Oh, perfect. Oh, yes. So, oh, it's still it's all black, because of course. Okay, yeah. So this is a very practical EDC blade. I called it a drop point a moment ago, but look how low that tip is. This is perfect for utility, because this is a perfect EDC knife that happens to also be both like fun and weird, and something that you can safely and quickly deploy with one hand.
Yep. keeps everything out of the way.
So cool.
I know. I love the like in this half kick position. We did so well back in 2020 SHOT Show when this was released. Just that thumbnail was what really put us over, and
Oh,
I thought it
I
was
clicked
super
that
cool.
video for sure.
I think a lot of people did, and we were really doing well at that show. It was really fun to see. And Joe, we had so many iterations of any products that we work on with his.
I can imagine.
It's back and forth, constant debate over the anodization and if it's going to be enough for the constant usage. The Rivery versions of this, he really put through the ringer to make sure that they're just as strong. And I have all the confidence when we have the sign off on. He's on version 64.2 of this design. And man,
I love that there is that version that is a lot lighter weight, because this is a little bit hefty. Yeah, so having that version that is significantly lighter weight but still has this enough structural integrity to be completely the knife it was intended to be. And then this is just
we recognize this ends up being a tactical box opener in a lot of ways, and that
Oh,
one is a little bit
absolutely.
more applicable to the use case, but still really fun. And yeah,
and of course having this like murdered out all black version. You can open those boxes without anyone knowing you're there.
I didn't see any reflection as you open that box. Incredible.
So stealthy.
That's when I keep bringing up that fact, and I feel like that fact of like blacking out a blade to stop the reflection is lost. And I don't know. Maybe it's just a 2012 thing where things were more tactical.
I absolutely adore Joe Caswell's designs. He's so clever and creative. And this is just a perfect segue into the weird kind of stuff we're getting into next. Okay. So keeping in the idea of linkages, bringing back one of the people we mentioned earlier, these are the Hawks again.
Yes.
This is the ET from Kershaw. This is the ET external toggle, and it's called that because the toggle mechanism from the Hawks was something that they originally put. Okay, they love acronyms, especially back in the day. So they had a knife called the Toad, which they only did as customs. And his Toad was toggle operated anti-drag. Sure, they're all acronyms. And that had a very similar kind of toggle system, but entirely internalized into the knife. And so since this version is all externalized, and you're seeing the whole thing happen, that's why this is the external toggle. But they're calling it the ET, not just to keep with the fact that they are acronym people, but also because this is so weird that it does feel like something from an alien, and you got that extraterrestrial quality. So that is so weird. And then, as long as you keep your finger out of the way, again, you have to light up. Man, getting it timing right. Why can't, there we go.
There it is.
There we go.
Oh yeah, now you're on it.
Got the timing down.
Wow.
Oh, that is so fun and weird. And why is this a thing that you can do with a knife? This shouldn't be possible. This is too fun and weird. And really going to chop your finger.
100%.
They went out of their way to send unsharpened samples of these out to knife shops because they knew people were going to go like this
Yep.
and chop. And so you can find these like not for sale, unsharpened blade stamped ones. I know one person who got one of those and actually sent it, and Gavin resharpened it. This
So cool.
is so neat. And so this is effectively, okay, it's called a toggle. And that's because it works the same way as, this actually is a mechanical toggle. And people think about, like I have a video up on my channel that walks through how this works and compares it to how like a light switch works. But basically there is a type of over-center mechanism where there is a spring that's trying to force it into, the spring is trying to force it into one of two positions, and there's a middle point and you're toggling between those. And so basically that big torsion spring right there, that's the thing that's like you're pushing against when you're pushing down on this. That's trying to push pressure through this linkage into this piece right here, trying to push it to the right. And if you're right there, all of that force is going directly into the pivot, and it'll just kind of like rest like that.
Okay.
But if you go on either side, slightly below, now that spring is going to push it down, or slightly above, now it's going to push it open. And so this is a over-center mechanical toggle. And there's actually two of these in this knife, because that's also how it's locking open. Like this is a locking knife with nothing to push out of the way, because this is a toggle in the opposite direction. This, when you go to close it and you're pushing on the spine of the blade, this is another like pushing into now this pivot.
Yeah.
And so if you're right, there's the balance point. Anything above that, pushing on the spine is going to try to close it. Anything below that is going to push it further into the handle. It doesn't look as dramatic as on this side, but literally any kind of pressure on this is only going to push this further into the handle. Mechanically has to work that way. And so this is actually a very strong law, even though it doesn't kind of really feel like a lock at all.
Totally.
It's so Weird.
Yeah, I remember having these back in the sporting goods store back in the 2000s.
How many people cut this?
Well, that was a tough part. It was hard to sell because it's just such a funky blade and people looking for something more utilitarian. And then it's up to the salesperson to be able to demo it correctly. I think you have to
Get the
out
line
bag,
in,
but it is beautiful and how you have to overcome that sort of hump. Once that screw gets beyond it, it's going to go. But you have to figure out.
It relies on momentum. You have to have the swing of the blade to get you past that.
Totally. There we go. Now we're getting it. Now we're on it.
It's so out. Oh, and they worked a carabiner in for some reason. Why not?
Why not? So cool. This is such a cool time in knives too. This is way ahead of its.
Yeah, that's
at any point.
2005.
And you're on and off the roller.
Right. So that's actually fun. If we look at how this works down here, when this is closed, there's a little tiny, well, it's this right there, that little catch. And if you look at that, that's camming up a tiny little ball. And in the open position, it doesn't do anything. It's not touching.
Yeah.
But in the closed position, that is camming a tiny little bar right there that locks this in the closed position. Like that itself is a really clever mechanism where you're rotating this and it's camming a piston bar up. Like there's so much going on here. Even this pocket clip. This is a weird bent over crazy thing that you can technically swap. You have to take out a bunch of pieces, but like you can technically swap this and make this ambidextrous.
I didn't even notice that there was a clip as well.
That's a clip.
Totally. I didn't see that there was a gap.
Because you could carry this in your pocket.
I would love to try that out. And then you'd have to be a two-hand. I wonder if you could ever, with enough practice, if you get down to one hand, that'd be kind of tough, but that is so cool.
I figured out exactly the right way to do it once.
Oh,
Look at that.
just like that.
I got that in my first try.
Wow.
Holy crap.
That was
When I try to do this at home, it's like 50 tries later, I'm like, oh, yay, and I consider it a victory. Okay, so
cool.
this knife back here is the thing that got me into weird knives, and a year and a half later is when this came out, and this is the thing that made me go like, yeah, I made the right choice. Knives are fucking cool. I had to swear on this. Knives are freaking cool. Yeah,
They are flipping cool, let me tell you.
that makes even more sense. Let's stick with this kind of weird things that move in ways you can't possibly imagine and go to something. This is another one of those early knives that I have lusted over and really badly wanted, and they simply don't come about. This is a shapeshifter from Scorpio Design. This is a guy named Gunter Lobach. He's in Germany, and he's still making these. And I had no idea that was still the case. These literally never come up in any kind of secondary market. I've had an eBay alert to tell me if one popped up for literally like 16 years and never once did it trigger. And I just assumed, because I hadn't heard of anything from him for a really long time, that he was gone. He was old, he just got out of the market, something.
Yeah.
And then I found an email address for him and I was like, hey, do you still make these? He's like, of course I do. I'm like, really? And so this is a handmade custom made for me this year.
Wow.
He was so cool to work with and pick everything out. And he actually forged this steel because he actually, I'm pretty sure, has a PhD in metallurgy and forged this. At first glance, what the heck is even happening here? Why is there a big slot? There's a little lock right here. It's a little tiny slide forward, and that's what's preventing this from doing anything. CRKT even talked about bringing this to production at one point, but you'll see in a moment why the legal team said no. It'd be so easy to cut yourself. You push up on this, and this entire thing slides out. And so it'd be so easy to slide into, so easy. Or if you're holding this upside down, to slide into your hand. It's a liability, but so you slide this through itself, and then this snaps into place.
Oh man, the way that the handle meets is so seamless.
This is just wild. It's actually like pretty comfortable, pretty ergonomic.
And marrying the movement with that, like that tight control around the handle, so beautiful.
Oh, I know.
Really thin blade.
He calls this his some kind of twist or twirl, because this is a single piece that is. Oh yeah,
I'm gonna have to kind of do it. Is you pulling this out, correct? You do.
You pull back on this and push on that at the same time.
Oh, I was overcoming it.
Kind of.
It's a little bit.
But this is the same concept as we were saying a moment ago with the ET, where it's an over-center mechanism.
Yeah.
Because in order for this to, like, this is the point, and you're on one side, to get past and get over that center point, you actually have to flex the handle of the blade.
Interesting.
And that's what's holding it open, is that it has to flex the blade open and then it pops into place.
God, beautiful how that marries right there. That is crazy. I'm gonna let you do that. I don't know if that's yours. That is so cool.
It was a literal dream come true. 15 years, 16 years in the waiting to have one of these, and let alone it was so fun to actually work with Gunther on this. And yeah, I don't think I've ever tried closing it that way, so getting the motion correctly.
Wow. God, the way it comes out,
It's fluid in this way.
yeah, it's very,
It's so
as it travels along that line and at the very last minute it pivots up. That's
and
cool.
this clicking into place is almost completely silent. Like it just closes and now is locked.
That's beautiful.
So wild. Um, when he ships this, it's entirely in German, so you have to use, like, Google Translate on your phone or something. He ships a book that has pictures of all of the design prototypes and all the iterations that it's like he literally ships it with, like, a museum piece showing you the making of. It's so freaking cool. This is another one of those things that when I saw this, my mind went, "You can do that? Let alone you can do that in knives?" It's so neat. Uh, okay, we got 2 more pieces, and they're all gonna have the same kind of feel of like, "What?"
I know. This is cool.
This is the biggest thing on the table, the biggest thing in my collection, the heaviest thing. Look how thick that is.
Yes.
That's insane. Look how thick that blade stock is. Okay. This goes back to what we were saying here about trying to fit a big blade into a smaller handle. There's nothing small about this handle, but look how big that blade is.
Oh,
Feel that in your hand. You gotta just tap that.
yes. Feels good. Feels
Oh
right.
yeah.
Yeah. I really dig that. Oh my gosh. So cool.
So this is by
Holy
Midgard's Messer. And this is the Locken Valhalla. And this is actually the second generation of it. This is by, I'm gonna have to look up his name. It's by a guy named Alberto Garibaldi. And he made these handmade custom versions that are actually like sleek, looking nice. They actually look a lot like this when they're open. But he licensed the design to Midgard's, and they turned it into this absolutely insane monster knife. And watching this and seeing how the pieces slide into each other and around each other and through each other and then up and then down and then back in, there's like this really bizarre fluidity to it.
Your hand path, you think it's going to be a nice radius, but it's not. You're going to get like hot up and then you come back in
Flip
and then
up and then around and up. And this is another one of those things where, like, how do you come up with that? Being able to visualize all of these linkage pieces working together and like it's hard enough for people to imagine just this, you
Totally.
know? So something that goes like this, like what?
just amazing to get to folding knives in custom production is such a challenge. I mean, some people start obviously with fixed blades, and then to move to folding knives is such a challenge. And then to get outside the box, once you're like, that's not enough of a challenge. To get outside of it, it's just
I have a buddy who did literally like chop wood with this and
Yep.
baton with these, and it actually does hold up. This second generation has 2 of these. The first version only has the one little catch peg,
yeah.
but these pop out, and that's where you lock. And you pop them both in, and then that slides. And again, just watching it move is so surreal.
So pretty.
Now, coincidentally, like this is going to air whenever, but coincidentally, the day we're filming this, Midgard's just released the pre-order for what they're calling the Baby Valhalla. And it's a shrunken down version of this. And on the one hand, okay. On the other hand, sort of what makes this so delightful is that it's enormous and absurd. And so, like a EDC-able version of this,
Yeah.
on the one hand, really cool to be able to have that. On the other hand, like the fact that this is like, that's insane. You can do that.
Witness me. That was cool.
And so a tiny version kind of beats
Yeah.
that for you.
Oh, but
Look at the size of that finger choil.
oh, I love it when you choke up on it.
It's
Now you're
practically an entire wrist. That's insane. These versions are being made by Fox Knives in Italy, and
Great
they're
job.
really well
I
done.
love the spines on the back. It's beautiful.
gorgeous.
How many they have, and they all line up. It's so pretty.
I know, they're so clean.
I know they all to make them all line up, liner and scale is pretty incredible.
This is another one of those fingerprint magnets, though. Like, it's everything's shiny. This was the blue handle was like a pre-order only version that they did, and they make silver handles.
And the name, I can't believe they got the name. Naming your knife is hard. They got Valhalla. That's super cool.
And it's so fitting. This is
it
exactly
makes sense. I would, yeah. You have to give that knife that name for sure.
okay. So there's only one thing left, and it
It's the thing.
It weirdly blows everything else out of the
I
water.
know. This is the thing.
Like on a table where we have stuff like this, the idea that you can blow something out. Okay. This is the epitome of fitting more blade into a small handle. This is pretty small. And it looks so much like something out of Star Wars. You can hear it rattling and clanking. This is called the collapsing blade. It'll be very clear in a moment why. Let's see if I can do this on camera.
This left us all speechless in Seaside, Oregon. We're all just standing around.
I brought this to Blade Show, and no matter how many times you open it, everyone around goes like,
You can't help yourself.
that's just kind of like, this is insane. This is made by a guy named Joseph Varner, and he literally just makes these in his garage or basement or something like his home shop. He does everything. This is 3D printed. These things are like, I think, laser cut. He's doing like titanium spot welding in certain places. This is I don't remember what steel, but this is an actually very sharp blade. This is a usable knife. And because he sharpened into this like hurt point here, it actually does cut through paper and not snag.
Really? Oh man, it kind of hides the edge a little
You
bit.
can kind of cut with this. And then you push down on this to unlock it and then slide over on that. And then let's do this in slow motion. Collapsing blade.
It's a symphony.
And if you do it quickly, you can do that. And you can also like go close it fast too. It's so fun to play with.
This is the one. And it's just that easy. I only got to play with it back then, and it's not even that much. That is so crazy.
It's just bonkers. Like, okay. When I saw this, the 8-year-old part of my brain that has always wanted just some kind of sci-fi space contraption was like, oh my God, I need that. And I messaged him and I talked with him. I'm like, how did you come up with this idea? Why did you make this? Like, what made this happen? He goes, well, you see, there's an 8-year-old part of my brain that always wanted this to exist. And I figured, why not try?
Surprise. That's amazing.
He's been working on this for a long time. This is, you patented this, like filed for the patent in 2016, but he was working on that even before that. So he's been working on this for almost an entire decade.
Yeah.
And he has all these different versions of this. Like this is technically, it says somewhere, this is like Mark 11, but this is Gen 3. I don't know if this is Mark 11 within Gen 3, but he has all sorts of different variants. The original were smaller and they didn't have that initial spring. Like one of the things that makes this version better is that this is spring loaded right now, which means if you push this, it just kind of pops itself out and gets you going.
Starts the process, yeah.
For the original version, you had to kind of like push over.
I see.
This is nuts.
It's amazing how easy it is. Like I got it the first time pretty much, and it's incredible that it can guide you like that to make that much blade come out of there.
And just looking at all the little pieces in here, and he did all of this by hand.
It's incredible.
He does these exclusively like by request on Bookspot Customs, and so it took probably 6 months to be on his books to get a piece. But
yeah, 3D printing is really interesting too. I don't know how I got the scale so smooth on the outside.
I know he actually
questions.
So he is a big nerd, and he's on Blade forums, and he just kind of posts all about this. So he talks about what polymer this is, and he switched different polymers. It's funny. He switched to this one. He had a previous a different white version. He switched to this one because this is almost impossible to stain. But I was thinking, it means you can't dye it. Like I've seen people writ dye the earlier version. So there's like positives and negatives.
It's a funny little change.
But yeah, it's so weird inside everything. And it is kind of clacky. It's a little, every single one of these feels a little bit like a janky prototype in a way. But at the same time,
I don't know that I'd want it any other way.
That's part of the charm. It's amazing.
I like the mechanical noise and hearing it all do its thing.
It's so clacky. It's so mechanical. Like a large part of what I like about knives is the fact that they are mechanical moving objects that click into place. And things like this that are so clicky, so swing, clack, snap, click into place. I love everything about it.
I think everyone does. It's so much fun.
If you want to look this guy up, he goes by Polydont. That is Polydont LLC, I think is the name of the thing. There's the tooth. Polydont is a word that means like multi-tooth, just like how you describe sharks that have multiple rows of teeth.
Oh, okay.
And that's why his logo is a shark's tooth.
I was trying to figure out what that was. At first I thought it was like a maybe a tri-tip steak or something. That kept me so close to that.
As far as you used to use this as your steak knife. And he does have a patent on this, and he has the patent number right there because, you know, this is the kind of thing where you want to look up the patent. You want to be able to see the schematic diagrams and see how this all fits.
Oh my gosh. The patent's got to be mind-blowing just to describe this mechanism.
So complicated.
Yeah,
So many
on part too is just like mind-blowing. Yeah, this is the one I remember when you pulled this out. It was crazy. It blew everybody's minds. You know, we do a lot of cool mechanisms here, but there's obviously levels to it, and I love to see that people are still innovating.
Oh my God. Like, and the fact that he's still chipping away at this, like this is just a passion project. He's just this kind of nerd. I adore that. I absolutely love that.
That is super cool. Yeah.
So this is everything that I brought, but you mentioned seeing pocket clips. I have something in my pocket that we can end on. Do you recognize this pocket clip?
I don't know.
Okay. So this pocket clip, before we show the knife, is Hawk's specific spring-loaded pocket clip. This is something that Grant and Gavin came up with, where
cool.
it's like a bent metal piece right there.
That's cool.
But this is on the Serge Knives Rook. So this is Serge Panchenko, and this is one of his custom rooks from the first drop. And this is completely handmade, well, handmade is not entirely the right word, he uses CNC. But this is entirely made by Serge, but using two different mechanisms, a detent mechanism and a lock mechanism from the Hawks. And so we've got the Hawk lock here, which has this like lever pullback. And I think up close, I think you can kind of see what's going on. There's like a peg in the blade, and you can watch as this goes, it pushes that back, and at some point it snaps in front of it.
So cool.
So it works kind of like a sliding bar lock, kind of like a crossbar lock, but all only on one side.
Mm-hmm.
And then the real part, have you ever handled one of these?
No.
Okay, the part that's going to feel the weirdest to you is the detent. The toggle detent is really, really interesting.
Really interesting.
It snaps in place.
I love it. Like when you flick it open too, and you can see that kind of, you can almost not see it. It goes so quick. So when it locks into place. Wow. Yeah, that's super smooth.
The detent is based on the same concept as, where did I put it on the table, as this. It's the same kind of toggle concept. It's a toggle detent, and it works a lot like a light switch.
Interesting.
Where there is a little spring and there's a little over center mechanism, and it's basically, when you're pushing that, it's compressing a little tiny compression spring, and then at some point it gets to the other side of that center point and now pushes open.
So cool. What a fun shaped blade too.
Oh, I know. That's certain stuff. So like the mechanisms are all Hawk, the design and wildness is all Serge.
100%.
And I love him to death. He is such a cool guy. He had a cool
collab.
What's so crazy is that Serge makes knives that are incredibly sleek and refined, or things that look batshit crazy, and nothing in between. I love that. I talked to them about that. I was like, so why? Like, how do you make stuff that's so weird looking and so refined looking? And he goes, well, I like refined, clean aesthetic. But then I get bored and my brain has to play. So then I make one of these. I'm like, I love that. I love that.
Obviously.
It's a fun little thing to end on. And it does have such a cool clip. And there's so many little parts. Just like the little pins as a backspacer.
Caged backspacer. Or I don't even know how to, yeah, pin. That is so cool. All the little pins.
Everything about this is bonkers. You can flick that off that little fuller. People that are better than me can thumb flick that. I can't for the life of me.
I'm not bad back. I use my index finger. It's not.
Oh, you're one of them? Oh, wait. Well,
it's cool. It's not as cool as like Instagram. Well, you get the middle finger. Yeah.
You could do it with the.
Never been able to get that middle finger thing done, but it looks a lot cooler.
You gotta like, no, I'm not able to do that. Anyway,
super cool.
Oh, these things are so fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing with all of us. This was like we got to really get into it here. You know, when we were out at Seaside, we got a little taste and you just blew our minds. We knew we had to have Kevin come back in. If you guys like anything you saw here, please check out Kevin's channel, Knife Nerdery.
Yeah, I love his kind of stuff. And working, my videos tend to be more like up close. How does this actually work? Details. So this has been a bit of a fast-paced overview of stuff. And on my videos, I tend to like do disassemblies and talk through exactly how these things are actually working. My videos tend to be long, but I always put little footnotes at the bottom so you can skip ahead.
They're great. Yeah, check them out. Really cool. I love seeing these mechanisms. I love that people appreciate the history that goes into this. I think that's sometimes lost on us on the constant like Kickstarter drop thing. Everyone's looking for the newest, fastest, which is awesome. Love that side of things, but it's kind of cool to go back and appreciate the shoulders on which we stand.
And one thing that makes me really, really happy is that CRKT is still playing in this space 100%. CRKT has things coming out soon that are still very much in this like mechanical oddity, clever, what am I even seeing type space. And that's one of the things I've always admired so much about this company. And the fact that this is still like an important part of the company's ethos and that they're still doing this, I love it. I'm so happy to see it never stop.
Hope we don't. I really enjoy it. I've always loved CRKT for what we do, and diving into the history. This has been a real lesson even for me. So really appreciate it. Thank you for being here, Kevin.
Yeah. Thanks so much for watching.
Thanks, guys.